Yeah, look, excited about the day. Excited to get the players we got. I felt like it kind of fell the way we had hoped in a lot of ways, and yeah, just excited that it's over too. So it feels like a long draft, to be honest with you, but excited about it.
You actually made all 9 picks.
We did.
Ups. Was that?
Well, first of all, there was no trade down. There was no trade ups and no trade downs. Yeah, you're right. So that's progress, I guess, in your guys' eyes.
Was that a mission? Was that something?
No, wasn't a mission. Look, there was a lot of discussions. At times we had things that I thought we were going to do, go in both directions, believe it or not. But, either the player that the team, we thought we were going to make a deal with wasn't there for them, or, we decided that, we had a better opportunity to stay where we were. So there were some deals on the table that we talked about. I felt like in general there were fewer deals this year than most. I know for us there were fewer calls, and so it'll be interesting to see when it all gets added up how many deals were done. But it just felt like there was fewer than normal.
Any chance you can tell us one of the players that was there on the board that made you stay where you were?
Yeah, I think no. It really wasn't a matter of. A couple times it was like, hey, do we need to go up to get one of these 2 or 3 guys that we have targeted in this area? And then, look, it looked like we were going to at least get one of them, so we stayed where we were. And then there was a couple times where we were talking about moving back because we thought that there was going to be some guys gone, and they weren't, so we didn't. And I didn't think that any of the deals were like really great value either, so they were fair, but it wasn't like a deal that we can't turn this down.
Can you tell us about taking a quarterback in particular at 40 was especially when we saw the Giants go up and get one, I think at 23.
Yeah.
Was it hard to stay patient when I assume he was probably the one guy at that position?
No, I think that we felt like that was the right value for us, and that there were some other players. If Tyler hadn't been there were some other players that we were going to feel really good about in that area. So I didn't think that when we talked about, obviously we talked about moving up for not just him, but there was a couple of other candidates as well. But we just felt like we'd have to give up too much in order to do that, and we were still going to get players that could really help our football team.
What is the thought process on that decision? Obviously, you probably had heard it's the highest this franchise has taken a quarterback in like over 50 years. I mean, it doesn't happen often, and how easy is it to weigh that against other positions?
Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the process, every year. And there have been times where we've I don't want to say targeted, that's not the right word, but we talked about taking a quarterback, even in the first round, and it just didn't fall right for us. So some of that's, just circumstances as opposed to desire, I guess is the right way to say it. But yeah, we love Tyler. That through the evaluation process, we really liked him, and he was available when we were picking, and so pulled the trigger on that.
Can you take us inside that process a little and just some of the things that made him the guy, and some of the things you really liked about him?
Yeah, again, it's just the whole process, and it's obviously it's the tape, it's the background, the interviews. I think it's a benefit when a guy's had a lot of experience, and has a little maturity to him at that position. You get a player that's a little older, so in some cases, that might be a detriment, but I don't think it is a quarterback. And so, I think every person that evaluated him, every person that talked with him, every person that interviewed him, and coaches that spent time with him really liked him, and I feel really good about it.
And just when you guys were discussing trading up in the first round, did that Atlanta trade kind of change the market, the trade market a little, just how much they paid to move up? Like, does that affect what you're able to maneuver then?
No, I mean, not really. I mean, when we discuss whether or not moving up, we have a pretty targeted value, and in general, we're not gonna come off that. I did feel like there was a lot of teams in the back half of the draft that were trying to move backwards, so the market was probably a little softer than maybe some other years, but ultimately we didn't do it.
Mickey, you hit pretty much every position good, but where do you feel like y'all are at receiver right now?
Yeah, I think that going into the draft, we probably would. There were some receivers that we really liked, and we hoped that we'd have the opportunity to get, and it just didn't work out. So I think that's probably the one position that going into the draft you'd like to have, but when you follow your board and you take the value presented to you, and it just never really presented to us at receiver. I think there was a couple times when we thought we were going to get a receiver at a particular slot, and that guy got taken a few picks in front of us, so it just didn't work out. Yeah, look, we thought like he's one of the top linemen. I mean, obviously Outland Award winner. We think he's versatile in terms of where he can play for us, and we just felt like, hey, we're going to get the best 5 linemen on the field, and love his makeup. I mean, love it. I got several texts from people after the pick that are associated with the program there, and just think he's one of the greatest teammates that they've ever had, and one of the great people they've ever had. So we're really excited to get him. Really worried that he was going to get taken in front of us, but excited that he was available. It's funny. I think we got 2 guys from Texas and 2 from Louisville, right? So there's a trend there, I guess.
You told us on Wednesday something to the effect of when you're picking that high.
Excuse me.
Yeah. When you're picking that high, you want to have a player that will be there for 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
I mean, were you picturing Kelvin Banks?
Yeah, and there was a few others, but yes, absolutely, absolutely.
When you talk about a guy like Tyler, you mentioned a few things you liked about him, but was there one thing that really kind of stood out about his on-the-field ability? And when it comes to his experience, do you think his experience makes him the kind of guy that could compete, for the job right away when he gets in here?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be a competition. We like the guys we've got, and we'll see. We'll just see what happens, going forward.
For Kelvin, I mean, in terms of deciding what position he's going to play, is that something that you have an idea of now, or is that something that gets decided throughout?
Yeah, that's gonna be a decision by our coaches, and look, we've got a long time to make that. And what's comforting is that we've got people on the offensive line that are pretty versatile, and we'll let that sort itself out. We don't need to make any of those decisions right now.
How'd you feel like Kellen handled himself in the draft?
Yeah, he was outstanding. He really was calm and outstanding. We had really good communication between him and myself and Jeff and our coaches and scouts. It was fantastic. It really was. He was like a veteran as a head coach in there.
My apologies.
That's okay. I just.
After you talked to us the other day, Derek Carr's brother said, kind of went on NFL Network and talked about him and said that y'all had known about the injury since the day it happened. Now that the draft is over and y'all have selected a quarterback, is there anything else?
No, I don't have anything else about that right now. We'll get that sorted out.
Did the uncertainty at that position increase any desire or urgency to draft one?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I said to you guys, we're in the business of quarterbacks, and there was an opportunity to get a guy that we valued really highly, and he was available to us, so that's what we did.
Tyler hadn't been available. Were there other quarterbacks you liked potentially lower in the draft that you said position groups you wanted to hit? Was quarterback one that if you hadn't gotten Tyler, you still would have wanted to hit?
I mean, there's guys in this draft we like. There's no question about it, and if available at the time, yeah, I would say yes.
I mean, you obviously did not take one at 9, so is he the only one that you guys would liked in the top 2 rounds?
Yeah, I don't really want to say that. There were some guys we liked, yes.
Just to
Were
clarify,
you surprised by? Look, it's the biggest story in the country, by the whole Shedeur Sanders thing and how
Yeah.
it played out.
Yeah, I was surprised he wasn't taken earlier. Yes.
Mickey, what do you like about the linebacker that you took today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, highly productive, 3-year starter, a lot of juice. High character, just lots of good things. He's the mainstay of a defense at Oklahoma, and I think he had almost 400 tackles in his career. There's just, what's not to like? He's big and long and fast, and he's going to fit right in with our group, and he'll I'm sure learn a lot from DeMario and Pete, and just gives us a lot of depth at in that room, and so excited to have him.
How much was Quincy Riley's versatility a factor in your decision to draft him, and what else did you really?
Yeah, our defensive coaches talked about that. Is that here's a guy that they think can play inside and outside, and another guy that was productive and played a lot of games, and probably a bit of a surprise that he was available when we took him for us, and so excited to get him as well. That was kind of the theme today, is that some guys that we maybe didn't expect to be available, and they were, and so that's why there wasn't a lot of movement, I think, for us.
Devin Neal, one of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Another guy, I keep harping on the same thing, production, right? Production. Here's a guy that had 3, 1,000-yard seasons, and can play third down. He can catch a ball. He can protect. So I know our coaches are excited to put him in that room with the guys we've got.
You had a lot of guys in this draft that were captains, a lot of guys who were 3 or 4 year starters. Do you guys maybe put different emphasis on those kind of things than other teams? Because it seems like you've got a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know what other teams do, but I know makeup, which is what we're talking about, that's really important to us. It's really important to us. And there are, things that we look for. Our guys, team captains, are they, have they been through some adversity and come out the other side of that? Have they, are they intelligent football players? And so I think that's one of the things, team captain. Are they good teammates? Number one, So those are things that we spend a lot of time talking about. And frankly, there are guys that we rule out because it's not good enough for us in our eyes. So, yes.
You mentioned not getting the wide receiver.
Yeah.
But the flip side is you touched really every other position on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
You must feel good about that.
Yeah, we do. I think. Yeah. Yes, we do. I don't know how else to say it. I just think that when you look at our roster, we've got a lot of good players in a lot of different rooms, and yet there are there's depth that you want to gain. There's guys that you want to put in a room where maybe you've got an older player, and so you're looking forward to, hey, 2 years from now or 3 years from now, this guy can step into a starter's role, if not sooner. And so, yeah, those fall to each of those positions. We're down 2 corners from last year. The trade with Marshawn, and then Paulson going to another team. So you want to add to that room. Yeah.
Do you get the sense that this staff puts an emphasis on versatility, maybe if not more than other staffs you've worked with, or just how do you see them value?
Yeah. I think our staffs in the past valued versatility, but the structure of the defense is just different, and it's like I said in the press conference the other day, it's nuanced, but it's a little different, and so I think there is a little more, at least defensively. We're still trying to, as personnel department, we're still trying to understand exactly what our coaches want, but versatility is something that we've talked about a lot.
Could you point to one of your defensive selections of how maybe it fits that new vision? Or?
Well, Quincy, right? Right, we talked about he can play inside and outside, and that gives us some versatility because we've got some other guys, Alontae Taylor that has played inside and outside, and so, that's just one example.
The needs are everywhere, obviously, but the two positions you hit in round 3, defensive tackle and safety, are two that you had already addressed in free agency and have some depth there. Does that just say a lot to, those were player grade choices and not necessarily plugging immediate?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they were holes, but I would say, man, those were rooms that we wanted to put more people into. But yes, absolutely, the grades were, were a factor in terms of who we took at those spots. Vernon Broughton was a discussion about the second round, in the past few days prior to, the draft. We talked about, hey, this is a guy that's probably going to be a second round pick. And so, when we get him in the third round, obviously we feel really good about it.
What did you like about him so much?
I think, again, this is part of the structure of the defense. It's changing. And also, look, we have a coach in the building that's been with him. So we feel like we got a little inside information, and Bo and Brandon and Jay and our defensive staff, can look at this player and say he exactly fits what we're looking for in that position, that defensive end position. So,
does wide receiver become a priority with undrafted free agents now?
We're gonna sign a few, yes. So if that, I would say, absolutely, yeah. So we'll have some guys targeted in the undrafted free agent pool and hopefully hit on one. We've had some success in the past at that, and hopefully we will again.
When you said earlier that there'd be a quarterback competition, does that include Derek if he's healthy?
Yeah, Derek's a starter if he's healthy, so.
You said earlier, in regards to Shough, that you liked his experience and age and things like that. Is there, when you're looking at that position specifically, is there any pause or negatives for an older rookie, or does it really?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on who you are. I think some people look at that differently than others. Some of the people look at the younger guys and there's a bigger growth opportunity, and there's some truth to that. And others look, I think playing the position is like super difficult in our league. And what is going to happen? You're going to have some failure. You're going to have some adversity. You're going to get a lot of blame. And so if you've been through some of those kinds of things in your past, then it's easier to handle. If you haven't, then it becomes more difficult. So there's an experience factor, a wisdom factor that comes with just going through it. And so, a guy that's, last year was Bo Nix. He had 60 starts, right? So he had been through a lot. And Tyler's been through a lot, including a lot of injury adversity. So I think that can be a real asset and a real value.
Is it easier to catch the injuries when they're like bone breaks and they're not like stuff maybe has more long term?
So what was it? I'm sorry. What was
Is
the
it
question?
just easier to get past like some of the season-ending injuries with him since they were like kind of bone breaks and maybe not like the longer term rehab?
Yeah, I don't know that I'd phrase it that way, but look, there's a broken leg, right? So that's going to heal, and there's not really a greater risk of that recurring. The shoulder and collarbone, I think, so that's different maybe than a knee or a labrum tear or something. There's things that you have some ongoing concerns about, and then there's other injuries that you have lesser concern about. So,
what stands out to you about Tyler on the field? What's he elite?
I think he's decision making. He can make all the throws. Listen, you guys will get to. You heard it from Kellen the other day. He talked about the things that he really liked about him. So we all like the same thing.
Not always.
Something Kellen also mentioned about is just the way he handled adversity. What stuck out to you about the way that Tyler handled adversity throughout his culture?
Yeah, I think we had a really good visit with him and talked about starting at at Oregon, and why that ended up not working out, and going to Texas Tech, and then going through the injury stuff, and then ending up at Louisville, and the things that he had to do to in a short period of time to be the leader of that team and perform really well. And it's just all these experiences and how he's handled them, and how that he talked about how that affected himself, and how he felt like that benefited his growth as a quarterback, and it was impressive.
Yeah, the transfer part of that is interesting. I mean, you guys almost have to do due diligence when players are transferring this many times now, and kind of this era.
Yeah, listen, I think the job that our scouts have to do is tougher now, because sometimes, especially when it's over a 6-year period or a 5-year period, you go back and you talk to a lot of the people they've been with at these other places, and so you can understand what happened, what the growth opportunity was, and how that any player, not just Tyler, any player who's changed schools has matured, and man, more and more of these guys have gone to multiple schools. We've got a number of these draft picks have done the same thing. So
when you have that volume of information, does it easier or harder to sift through?
Yeah, I think, look, we're in the business of gathering a lot of information and looking for, what I call red flags or green flags, things that concern you and things that enhance your opinion. So more information is better.
What would you say that you most achieved with this draft class?
Oh man, I don't know yet. Ask me in 3 years.
But did you do you feel like it's about building depth or finding foundational pieces?
Yeah, I think there's some of both of that there. I mean, I think there's a lot of guys here that have opportunity to be, starting contributors for us and good players for hopefully a long time. But that it's up to them, and it's up to us to help them grow into that and give them the opportunity. But pretty pleased with the group right now.
And how important was it to have kind of, I guess specifically with Kelvin, that foundation for Kellen's first draft, like a cornerstone?
Well, I think, I don't know. It's a good question, but I think we both believe you build, from the inside out, in offense line, defensive line, and here's an opportunity to, enhance the offensive line again. We did that last year, and man, we feel like we've got the elements of a top flight offensive line, and how long that takes to develop, we'll see. But one of the things that I think Kellen talked about when he was hired was alignment, right? Being aligned, and I felt like in this draft we had really good alignment, and that was part of it. All right.
Sorry. Just if he plays left tackle, and let's say you guys, I know it's not decided yet, but
Excuse me. I normally don't even have my ringer on, so.
if it does move over Fuaga to right, how do you think that impacts kind of his development? Like, was there still value of seeing him playing left all of last year? Or?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, we're right back to, versatility, right? I mean, Tally played right tackle his whole college career and moved over to left, didn't bat an eye, and I thought played really well for, a rookie left tackle, and he was fantastic. And so we'll let that all sort out. I'm not concerned about that. It'll sort itself out. We've got a lot of time.
Along those lines, and again, it's theoretical, but we might not talk to you about it for a long time. When you guys have evaluated Trevor Penning over the years, I know we've talked a lot about don't really see him as a guard or whatever, but if that's his best chance to get on the field, does he have traits that you guys have?
Look, he has great traits, and I thought he made a lot of progress at tackle last year. So again, we're just going to let all these
But I meant
things
that he
sort
could
out.
also be considered at guard.
Yeah, I think I don't know the answer to that yet, because we'll talk about that. But obviously we did talk about how do we envision this. But ultimately it was like, okay, we're going to get the 5 best linemen on the field, and we'll see how that sorts out. And look, I don't want to get pinned down that we're going to do this or we're going to do that, because I don't know how it's going to turn out yet. And I don't think our coaches do either. Although they do have vision for each of those players. All right? Thank you, guys.